Hi, I'm Dr. James LePage. Today we're going to be talking about applications. To get a job, you've got to put in an application. It's either got to be a paper application or more and more common now, it's applying online, filling out an application on the internet. So there's a lot of do's and don'ts when it comes to applications. And we're going to go over kind of the basic and more sophisticated ones right here. Not all are going to apply to paper, not all are going to apply to internet applications, but in general, these are what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing when you're filling out an application. So first, always be neat. On a paper application, take your time, write neatly. Make sure that you don't misspell things if you can avoid it. If you make a mistake and you misspell something and you recognize it, just draw one single line through it and then write the correct spelling either next to it or right above it. Don't scratch it out and try to obliterate your mistake. That just looks messy. Remember, your application many times is your first impression. If it's messy, if it's misspelled, if it's done in the wrong way or things aren't answered completely, it makes you look worse in the eyes of the employer. So if they've only got one position, they got time to interview one person, they got two applications, and that's all they're going on. They're going to at least talk to the person, if the applications are similar, they're going to talk to the person whose application is neater, more professionally done. So always be neat. The next thing that you need to do is fill in every blank. Whether it's online or whether it's in paper, you need to make sure there's something written in every blank on the application. The important thing is if you leave a blank in there, the employer doesn't know whether that means no or whether it means you were just careless and didn't answer it. And if there's a chance of you showing off that you're careless on an application, avoid it. That is not something you want to show. So if it doesn't apply to you, just write NA, not applicable. That way the employer knows you read the question, understood it, and filled it out. One of the critical things when you're doing a lot of applications is you need to keep a cheat sheet. You need to keep a summary that you carry with you of your work experience, dates, addresses, phone numbers of past employers, names of references. You need to keep the list of your skills that you might end up putting on an application. That sheet needs to be available to you at all times when you are looking for work. And you can just copy from the sheet to the application. It's important. One, you don't want to have to spend a lot of time trying to remember what date was that, when did I start that job. Every time you fill out an application, you're just wasting time if you're having to think about all that. Have it all written down ahead of time and make sure that you can put the information on quickly. The other thing that's important about it is you may fill out an application, they call you in for an interview, and they give you another application. It may be the same application, but for some reason, they don't have your current application. It got misplaced. It's in another folder. It's left in somebody's office. The person who's going to be interviewing you doesn't have that application. They were told, interview this person. Eventually, those two applications are going to get together because when you get offered another application to fill out, it's okay to say, I filled out one already. Do you need me to fill it out again? If they say yes, you got to fill it out. And those two applications, when they get together, better match. Date for date, phone number for phone number, and address for address. If there are discrepancies on there, you have lost the job. There's no way they're going to hire you if the information on one application is not the same information on the other application. So that summary sheet keeps you from having to guess when you did this, when you did that, what the addresses were. Be as honest as you can about dates and times. Don't ever lie on an application about how long you worked for someplace or where you worked. Eventually, if it's found out, they'll fire you on the spot, and that because you lied on your application. So be honest. If a company no longer exists that you used to work for, it no longer exists. Just state it. Out of business. All right. There's nothing more you can do about it, but make sure you mention it. Go ahead and put it on the application if it's important. If you don't know the address of the company, try to find it out. It's one of the advantages of the cheat sheet, is you'll see those gaps. You'll see, oh, I don't know that. Try to find it out. If you just cannot find the company's address, you can write address unknown. It's not ideal, but it's better than leaving a blank. So writing address unknown is fine. If the company has changed its address and you know what the new address is, put the new address on there. Put the new phone number on there. Don't use the old ones. However, if you can't find them again, you can put address unknown. If you're a veteran and you're in the military for a number of years, you probably moved around a lot and therefore were on a number of different bases. In that situation where you're on a number of different bases, it's okay to put various, or you can mention all of the bases you were at on there. You don't need to get into the details about the address. Essentially, you're working for the Department of Defense, so therefore they've got one local address. But if you want to show that you've been around or that you've got a lot of different experiences, it's okay to put various locations, or you can write down the specific bases or the specific countries. The countries are probably more important in many ways to an employer than the bases, since they won't know the names of the bases across the world. Make sure that you get important job experiences on that application. Even if, and this may sound strange considering what we've talked about before, even if it isn't exactly what they asked for. So if they ask for your last 4 jobs and you're applying for a job as in a machine shop, and your last 4 jobs were not in a machine shop, but the 5th job was in a machine shop, you have got to make sure that job gets mentioned. You've got to make sure that you have some jobs on there that they can see that either show off your job-related or your transferable skills. Adaptive skills are important, but they got to be able to see that you're the kind of person who can do this job. So it's okay sometimes to play a little bit with those margins. Remember, the application is a screening tool the employer uses. They're not going to hire you because of your application. They may not interview for the app because of your application, but they're not going to hire you based solely on your application. They're going to want to talk to you. So when they come into their office and you're talking to that employer, you can then talk to her more about your skills, but you've got to use the application as a way to get in the door. Don't use the word fired on an application. There's no way around it. Some people are fired from jobs. It happens. But in general, I recommend just say let go. Everybody knows what it means, but it is a less harsh word. All right, so you're not lying to an employer. They know what it means, but fired somehow triggers something inside an employer. So writing let go is probably the smart way to go. If you get a hand application, a paper application, and it says sign your name, sign your name. If you don't sign your name at the bottom, then there's a good chance that you're going to have, your application is going to be tossed aside. When there are areas to talk about the kind of work that you've done, make sure you're including your transferable, your job-related, and your adaptive skills, all 3. The more you talk about the wide range of your skills, the better your chances are of your application getting passed on to the next stage. A couple of quick things about legal issues, and we'll touch much more on that in other sections. But if you've ever been convicted of a felony and it asks, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Check yes. It's important to do that. You've got to be honest in that situation. If they call you back, there's a good chance they can hire you with a felony. So checking yes doesn't cost you anything. If they ask you about the specific type of felony, just write, we'll discuss. And we'll talk more about that later. But we'll discuss is a way of letting them know that you're open to discussing it. You just don't want to write all the details on the application. Some employers may not like that. They may think you're being evasive. But most employers understand, and most employers accept will discuss. So play the odds, put will discuss in there. Be very specific about the time they're asking about felonies. If they ask you, have you been convicted in the last 7 years, and you were convicted 7.5 years ago and got out of prison yesterday, the answer to have you been convicted in the last 7 years is no, because it is not, because it was longer than 7 years ago. What we're talking about on the application, be honest, be professional, make sure you're selling your skills. Your application is oftentimes the first impression you make. So problems with your application suggest you'll be a problem as an employee.